Welcome, everybody, to the After Dark Show. I'm Don Rogers. I'm happy to have my guest tonight. He's actually been a friend of mine on social media for quite a while. I interviewed him on another show I was on in the past, and I was really looking forward to having him on because he is really fascinating. And who I'm talking about is his name is Donald Ledesma. He is a UFO and extraterrestrial researcher and documentarian. He is the host of Alien Strand podcast, which he recently actually had me on, and the co-host of the brand new podcast, the Awakening Frequency podcast. And his series, The Middle, is absolutely one of the most amazing documentary series on UFO and extraterrestrial contact I personally have seen ever. And I want to thank you so much for coming on, Donald. Welcome to the After Dark Show.
All right. Thank you for having me on, brother. I appreciate you.
I kind of stammered there for a second, but no, like when I start thinking about your movies, I just have like a million things I want to say about them going through my head. So I'm trying to like keep that nerd side of me under control because they're absolutely wonderful films.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate that, bro.
Um, just to kind of like break the ice here, I think my favorite question to ask everybody is like, what was the thing in your life, the paradigm shift, actually the expansion of your consciousness? What triggered that to make you realize things aren't what we were taught or what they seemed, and there's a lot more going on than what we're told?
Well, as you know, like we've from the very beginning on me, of course, it happened when I was a kid, and then that's when I first saw my first UFO at the age of 14. And when I saw that go across the sky mid afternoon, cutting the grass, I've told this story before, but it when I saw that thing go across the sky like a shadow, I just stood there and watched the whole thing take place. Right, it all unfolded under my eyes, and I'm like, okay, what the hell was that? Right. So I try always from that day on, I just kept on going to the library back in the days and just kind of digging and digging, right? So there goes my mind starts trickling and starts wondering, what is this? What is that? After those amazing books back in the day, they showed some beautiful pictures of UFOs from the 90s and stuff and 80s, and of course I'm an 80s kid. Um, it just kind of woke something up inside me, like after my 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever. Once I started getting older, everything was UFO for me. Everything. It's like I would watch UFO shows, movies, anything that I could find UFO related. And then, of course, 2019, I started making the podcast of Alien Strand, and everything. Once I started interviewing people, and then I started noticing that they were having similar, um, just similar acquaintances about how this thing unfolded in front of them, right? And from that then on, I just decided to, hey man, I think I need to start making documentaries about this.
And I'm really glad you did because I resonate a lot with what you just said. Because after watching your series as far as I have,
Right.
there's a lot of things that I've experienced in my own life that are actually mentioned in your series. And I'm going to hit on that like when we get into that.
Right.
So, when you had the transition and the idea to go from podcast to documentarian, how difficult was that process? Like, I know you're already set up for this, but like to switch from one to the other, was it
Oh my
much?
God. Yeah. So there I go. Okay, what kind of camera should I use? Should I use my cell phone? So I started off with a cell phone kind of videoing, and YouTube is a wonderful tool. Let me tell you that right now, because I didn't know anything about a camera, a professional camera, anything, nothing. I knew nothing. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna start researching this. Bought my first professional camera. I a marketplace around here and down here in South Texas. Some lady sold it to me for like 125 bucks with the lenses and everything. My first one, I was so proud of it, and it was an older, Canon D5300. I was like, all right, this is awesome. For me, it's brand new, but it's like 15 years old, right? I'm like, okay, well, let me try it, right? So there I was. I started making little promos for Alien Strand, right? Already. So I said, you know what? Let me try making promos. So I started making. So if you go back to Alien Strand on YouTube, at the very beginning, you'll start seeing little Alien Strand promos. And I was making a small little film with my son Jacob. He was little. He was about 8 years old or whatever. I used him as my prop and story in all those little promos. So I made about 4 of them. But and then I said, you know what? I have to learn how to do this. And so I started watching this gentleman. His name is Mark Bone. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's from Canada. He's there. He's got a big YouTube channel. So if you go to his channel, he teaches you from the very beginning how to frame, how to do everything like that. What settings to put your cameras on, everything. So I just self-taught it from then on, right? So I just took off from there, learning framing, watching films. Because I was always into watching films and how everything was framed and how everything was shot, how different camera angles. Lo and behold, I ended up learning it, right? And then I started investing in bigger and better cameras. So I went from $150 camera to, a $900 camera. Then I went from a $900 camera to a $5,000 camera. You know what I mean? So these cameras, people don't understand. I mean, yeah, you can shoot on a cell phone. You could actually make a film. There's nothing wrong with that. But I started noticing that, okay, do I really have to go that far in cameras? And I stopped right there actually. And then I just bought a couple of more your standard Sony cameras. And I said, you know what? I'm going to stick right here and then just see how well I do. Lo and behold, the middle part one, Terry gets a hold of me in 2019, late 2019. And there we go. We started talking about what he found on top of Paulina Peak.
That's actually what I wanted to get into next is how did that originate? Like what brought on the first movie? And then I'll play the trailer and we can actually get into some of the details. But like how did that exchange go? Like who found who and like how did you guys come to the idea to do this?
Well, I was sharing a lot of my my promos on Alien Strand podcast on the Facebook page, right? So back in 2019 when I started, so I was, all the clips. This podcast is coming up anyway. Terry found me through there. He would listen to my podcast and he would tell me. He actually reached out to me on his messenger and he says, "Hey man, I don't want you to think that I'm a freak kind of person, but I found something and I think you need to see this." And I'm like, "Okay, what is it?" And he goes, "So he went when he had never hiked up there before, but he found it on GPS first on the Google Earth. So that's where he found it. He actually found it in 2018. And then he hiked up there. I told him, you know what? Why don't you go up there? After I talked to him, and he waited till the following the spring and the fall and the spring summer. He went up there. I said, go up there. He had to lose weight for it because he gained like 400 pounds, whatever. Anyway, so he goes up there, shoots a video that what he found up there, and I was like, okay, man. He comes back and says, "Is there any way we can get this documented?" And I'm like, he goes, "I want people to see this," and he says because something happened to me as well. I'm like, okay. I said, so he told me his story. Of course, it's in the film, and then um, lo and behold, we start putting ideas together. So you know what? I if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this on the fly. I'm not going to script this. I want to make sure people see exactly what's happening as it's happening. So as far as the filming and documenting everything, because all I did was threw a microphone on him. I said, "Let's go, do it." And he was nervous at first, but we started getting it going. And like I said, we planned it. We planned it for a year until I finally gathered up the funds to go up there.
And it came out great. And I'm going to roll the trailer for that one. I hope I have these in the right order because I have all three. And this is the trailer for the first one.
In the process of my research, I found this location as I was searching through satellite imagery. like it resembles a spear.
When I first seen my first sighting, I actually seen a whole fleet of them.
So I saw it and I stood right here and I thought, do I want to walk into the light?
That's what was lit up. But there was no sound.
Come on, guys, follow me to the Cascadia Guides. We're here. Yes, I do feel like I'm connected with them. I am what they call a CE freak.
Why not believe it?
Yeah.
And that came together so tight, blows my mind every time I watch it. And I actually tried to hook my friend up with the link, and he couldn't get. It was weird because I sent him the one that I watched last night, and he couldn't get it to work on YouTube. I don't know if he's watching now because he follows my show. But yeah, like that one's on YouTube and Tubi, right?
Yes, it's on Tubi, YouTube. You can actually pay for it too on Amazon, or it's on Fossum TV. So it's called Fossum on Roku. Download the app, and you can see actually part 1 and part 2 for free on there with commercials, of course.
So just to let everybody catch up as far as we are, can you explain, like, Terry Lynch is the main focus of the first film. Mm-hmm. How did he come into this field? Basically, I guess is the best way to word it.
Well, and what happened was in 2018, he had about 5 o'clock in the morning. I think it was March. I can't remember the date exactly, but him and his son were going to work early in the morning, about 5:30 in Bend, Oregon. And when they came across this railroad track, they looked above, and there was this big glowing orb above one of the signs. He just stopped there and looked at it, and they were looking at it, and all of a sudden it separated and it made 5. All of a sudden it made 5 orbs. But in the center orb, he says there was an extraterrestrial, a pilot inside of there. And he goes, we were so close that he could see me and I could see him. It was an extraterrestrial, the gray, standard gray, big eyes. He goes, and it looked right at me. He goes, I saw him like adjusting things inside of the craft in the window. He says, you could see him moving things inside of like he had a screen of some sort. And he says, once we caught eye to eye, he goes, something happened inside of me. I got like this weird vibe. He goes, I was kind of scared, but at the same time, just something happened to me inside to where it just opened up for me. Because, he was a biker dude. He didn't know anything about science, education, nothing. He was just a motorcycle, shoot my guns. That's it.
He and I, completely different experiences. Mine was transdimensional experiences, and his was UFO contact. Right. But the result of those instances were actually fairly parallel, listening to Terry explain himself, because it's something I've mentioned on my own show a couple of times, and it's kind of funny. I had another podcaster ask me if I thought this was like a simulation or a holographic reality. And I was kind of meditating on it, and I went to sleep that night. And not only did I wake up with the knowledge of where to look to get the facts that I needed to explain my points, I also woke up with a rudimentary understanding of quantum physics.
Nice.
Which I know Terry had as very similar, and I don't know if it's savant syndrome or whatever they call it, but something happens when you hit a certain frequency of understanding. Things just start lighting up.
Yes. It's like I had a podcast. I had a podcast last night, and I said the same thing. I was like, it's like when you see something or experience something like that, it's like almost like you become a genius overnight. Like something happens. It just opens up in a big bright light inside. I see it says Jason saying, how long did the project take to film? So it took about a total of 12 days. So it took me 3 days to drive up there from down here, South Texas, all the way to Oregon, La Pine, Oregon. I stopped in the way in Las Cruces, New Mexico, where I I interviewed another gentleman by Ken Wells Jr. He's an author, uh, and the only reason I interviewed him because he was an expert in petroglyphs, right? So because the geoglyph that's on top of the side of that mountain has similar looks to a petroglyph, so I wanted his opinions and his like kind of I'm going to say like what he uses like more words almost like native intuitiveness in sense. He's not native, but he has this intuitiveness of how the consciousness works, right? So I wanted to, and just what you were talking about right now, how the consciousness and everything opened up for Terry when this happened, and it all kind of it all it did was it was like this, and then all of a sudden it just kind of came together. You know what I'm trying to say? So that it all came together towards the very end, and that's what I was trying to do in the film.
It it came together very well. I can't say enough. Like, you guys should go watch this in on one format or another because the footage is just amazing. Actually, all of the footage that Donald has in all of his films is enough to just make you sit there with your mouth agape because that's I do, and I've seen some of the things on your film on your footage. Like I've
Right,
seen the exact things on your footage with my own eyes,
right,
and to
right,
see video evidence of them is so reassuring.
right.
And I'm just going to go off topic here for a minute because this is one I want to ask you about. I spoke on another show about the UFO experience that me, four other kids, and three adults, two or three adults, I can't remember, had. Okay. And this was on a show. And about 2 days later, one of the girls that was with us when we saw what we saw, which is actually closely represented in one of the clips in your footage, she messages me and she's like, it was in 1993 and it went on for about an hour and blah, blah, blah. And this, and this was here.
Right.
And I was like, you don't watch my show, do you? And she's like, no. I'm like, I didn't message you about this.
Yeah.
No. I'm like, why did you message me? She's like, I don't know, but that's when it was. And she was actually kind of pissed off at me.
Wow.
And I don't know if me talking about it triggered some type of connection response or what, but like my wife can verify everything I just said
Right.
because I showed her the text from my friend and like she was legitimate. Like it was like I brought up a bad memory and because I brought it back into reality,
Yeah.
it like she brought it. It just, yeah.
It's like a
What is,
frequency. It's like a frequency impulse, like a boom, 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 like sonar, right? In a sense, but this is how I think about it that way. You know, it's sort of like a frequency. We all resonate some sort of frequency, right? So if they if somebody can connect to you that way, then yeah, I guess it's like, have you ever been down a street in the middle of the night? It could be 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Nobody's around. All of a sudden, a car's coming, same time as you, right? It's like, man, I thought I was out here by myself. It just, it happens that way, man. Some people are just connected that way.
that's what I was gonna ask you. Do you think people that have experiences with UFOs or ETs gain some type of connection afterwards? Because a lot of us do seem very connected after they have experiences with these types of, like a UFO or ET.
Yes. Yes, most definitely. Because I mean, even like if you watch the middle part two, Mr. Ryan Keaton in San Antonio, he didn't know anything about this stuff. No, no, I mean, it just freaked him out. Started seeing it just all of a sudden, and then he had this. He's having this awakening moment, just boom, 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 and it's hitting him even today. Still, like these. He texted me, I think, last night or the night before. I'm sorry, I didn't get to get back with him, but he said these things are getting closer and closer and closer to him. They're like freaking orbs going close to his house now. And he films it all the time. But his mentality was he didn't none of this would happen had ever happened to him. Now that it's happening, won't stop. Right. But it awoke him in a different way. Now his thinking process is a little bit different about the whole structure of the universe or the whole structure of everything. I'm just saying it that way, right? And so and then my other people that I interview as well, they all have the same mentality. it's always a shock mentality at the very beginning, right? It's a shock that hits you. And then you get, some people can accept it, some people don't. And it's sort of like a little PTSD of if you have something that happens to you in the middle of the night, things like that, right? If you have something that's weird. But if you have like a close encounters of the first kind or second kind, which most people do have today, it's just, it keeps you connected, but at a distance, right? And then from then on, you start opening up inside, and then whoever else has a similar connection, then you guys start connecting. It's kind of strange to say it that way, but that's what happens with people that are contactees. They all kind of go and sync together.
I I definitely think there's something to that, and I'm going to share another experience. And this happened on the lunar eclipse. I can't remember which particular one, but it was a lunar eclipse.
Right.
There's me, my wife, and our son all in the one house, and it sounded like basically somebody Ziploc containered opened the top of our house. There was like a whoosh of air, and we all had like this fresh oxygen taste in our mouth.
Wow.
And like William even came down. Did you guys hear that? Like it just, whoosh, and it was like
Right.
something put us back or sucked us up, or I don't know. Still to
Right.
this day, I
Right.
woke up and I was speaking absolute gibberish for about the. She thought I was speaking in tongues for about
Right.
30 seconds, and she's like, "Dawn, Dawn, Dawn," and I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "What were you just saying?" And I'm like, I don't know," but it's like
Right.
just 100 miles an hour, nothing.
Right. Wow. It's like you had to like a mix your your ones and zeros got mixed up. Let's just put it to you that way, huh? That's pretty much what happened.
Yeah, and I don't know if we all got taken somewhere that night or if it was a my lab abduction or what, but it was insane because no, there's my wife right there. Uh, like we all just woke up like, what just happened? Where did we just come from? Because we were all shook. We knew we weren't just here,
Right. Right. Wow.
right?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I believe it. I believe it. I believe people have those kind of occurrences. You know, sometimes when a whole family all together, you know, at the same time. Yeah, you know, and we always talk about how these extraterrestrials are out there, but it's, and I've talked about it in my podcast too. It's like, to them there is no time, and me and you've talked about it, Don. The same thing. You know, they have no time. There is no time for them. Time there does not exist for them. So you don't see them wearing watches when we see pictures of them, right? There is no time, so they can stop, alter time, change time, move things around, and I believe that they can do this. You know, they just, it's a different reality, and they know how to move around inside of it, right? And move us around inside of it. That's what I think.
I I totally agree with that, and I think one of the best descriptions I've ever had was from a guest, Frank Castle.
Mhm.
He's had multiple experiences like this as well, and he's like, think of like the old project slide projectors. They can
Yeah.
take you out a single frame, do
Right.
whatever they want, and put you right back.
Right.
And every now and then they miss by. I've had them miss by a couple of minutes. Sometimes it's out. Like people have hours. I believe there was an example of that in the one witness of yours. But
Right.
like I've experienced that, and I think that's the best description of it I've ever heard. Is like they can just take you out like a slide,
Yeah.
do whatever they want to do for as long as they want, and just boom.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And 100% believe that. I think that happens all the time, and I thought I heard a theory, and I don't know if it's true, but you know that expression, have you ever walked into a room and have no idea why you went into that room? It's because you
Yeah.
just left,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
You came back and like, shit, why
Yeah.
did I go into the living? Yeah, between your bedroom and the living room, you went somewhere.
Wow. Wow. And you know, the strange thing about that story that you're talking about, that's in the middle of the first movie, the gentleman, I'm trying to remember his name off the bat. I just had a long day, so it'll come to me later. But anyway, when we were checking into the hotel there in Bend, Oregon, right? he was working the front desk. He was the manager there. And he goes, "Hey, how's it going?" Because he saw our camera equipment. He goes, "What y'all doing?" I go, "Well, we're filming a documentary." He goes, "Oh, what kind?" And I told him. He was like, "Oh, really?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Man, I got this weird story, man." I said, "Really?" He goes, "Well, let me know. Tell me." So he started talking to me about it. He goes, I don't know what happened. So I'll tell you what, tomorrow morning, because that was late that evening. I said, tomorrow, if you want to film it, we can film you. It's up to you. And he's into the church and everything, very religious person. And he was kind of afraid to talk about it, but he says, "Man, I got to talk about this. This happened to me." And I was like, "Well, bring it on. If you're not afraid, bring it on." I said, because people need to hear from people like you. They need to hear that, I don't have these famous people on any of my films. They're just regular people, just like you and I. People that people you don't have no name, you don't even know who their names are sometimes, but every day somebody has these kind of experiences. And I want people out there to see in TV land that this is not made up. This is people that I just walk up to and they have these experiences and they don't know how or why or what, right? And they want to talk about it. And once they do talk about it, they feel so much better. It's like a big weight gets lifted off their shoulders, right? When they say it and they talk about it. It's kind of strange.
I I totally believe that because for the longest time I didn't talk about any of this stuff. Up until a year and a half ago, what I knew and what I accepted about the paranormal was I'm pretty sure I know we saw a UFO when we were kids, and I'm pretty sure ghosts are real,
Right.
right? That's what I knew a year and a half ago. And you've seen what's happened to me in the last year and a half. I had that moment
Oh
of
yeah. Yeah.
consciousness shift. Now I can't get enough of it,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Uh, just to bring us back to where we were, can you tell everybody what the Cascadia guides are?
So this is like maybe a 200-foot uh, geoglyph on top of a side of a mountain, right? It's an image made out of rocks and stones. It look very old. Of two, um, they look like extraterrestrials, EBEs or whatever, sitting back to back, facing one's facing east and the other one's west, I believe. So
North and
when
south.
yeah, no, I'm sorry, north and south. So when you see it, one's a female and one's a male, but their heads are elongated, skinny necks, and when Terry had that encounter, and then all of a sudden this pops up on his Google, and then we go and investigate it, and then on top of that, once you get up there, man, it's a special place. I'm going to tell you that right now. I've never seen anything like that in my life. You know, even and then people always say, "Oh man, y'all did that. Y'all did. Uh-uh. Not 8,000 feet above sea level." I'm gonna tell you right now. I mean, you can drive to the top of that mountain, but you got to hike down to where that geoglyph is, and it's off trail. So you have to literally hike to it, and we had to stop every 5 minutes to take a break for air. And then the conditions were raining all the time. It was like windy. It was horrible. And when we had to hike back up, we had to stop every 5 minutes for air, just to stop. Because, and I said, I'm not going to sit there and waste a half a day or 2 weeks, putting this thing together. This was already there. And then when uh we started doing kind of like mapping from 2000, earlier 2011, I believe. We started doing mapping of it. It wasn't there. And then all of a sudden, I believe he said in 2012, we looked at the mapping of Google. Then we started seeing like stuff start coming down off the mountain, right? So we think that it was mass wasting. So in other words, layers were coming off of the mountain, right? Through these hard snows, because they get snow galore over there, right? So the snow, everything was just kind of breaking everything down. Then you started seeing it little by little start come to into view through Google Earth, right? We started noticing that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, all right, so that's how we figured it had been there for a while. And then but it's like I had a podcast, not a podcast. I was on a radio show last week, this Monday, um, the Fenton radio show there in Oregon, and we talked about that. And she said, I just told her, I said that plot, it's deeper than that, because I actually took a photo of Terry, just a photo, not on the guides, but like he was on the edge of a cliff, and I took a photo, and we were in a different location, brother, different location. We're called a hole in the ground, or yeah, we were in a hole in the ground. So I took a picture of him, and he's standing there, and then I sent his picture. I said, I'm gonna send it to his friend of mine in United Kingdom. So he goes and looks at it, and he built this software to do analyzations, right? So he starts analyzing the photo, and he starts using this gold stuff, and I don't know what he did, but and behind Terry, you could see the Cascadia guides. The shape of them were coming through in the background, and he didn't superimpose them or nothing. I'm not talking like it's a clear picture. You can make out the whole structure of the Cascadia guides. And then he texts me. He goes, "Dude, you got to see this." And I'm like, "What?" He goes, he sent it back to me. He says, "Those were meant for Terry." I say, "He's connected." I'm like, "Really?" Yeah. So check this out. So in other words, you're going to see a drone shot of Terry down there and Jonathan, and you'll see that drone shot there, right? So I sent him the drone shot of that. So he does the analyzation of it, and it goes kind of close to where they're at. So the Cascadia guides are glowing gold. Terry's glowing gold, but Jonathan isn't.
Huh.
Huh? You see how deep this thing goes?
Oh yeah,
And I
I
have the
definitely
evidence. Yeah, I have the evidence of that. So
yeah.
it's hard to believe, man. And I could talk about this all day to people, and they'll just like, "Oh man, you're pulling my leg." No, man, I'm telling you, this is real. This is real. This is why I made the middle, the original, because we wanted to show what this thing was and how it's connected to people and how it's connected to ufology.
Yeah. Um, I have a friend. He goes by the name Cheech. He's a friend of mine from Ontario, and he fired a question here. And I think what he's asking here is how common is it for people that have encounters to have lost time?
It's very common, but it's but they have to have multiple interactions. So once you start having multiple, you can have that one encounter, and people have had these. Thousands of people have had this one encounter, or they've seen it, or whatever, and it flew by, whatever. They just didn't think about it. But once you have multiple encounters, I'm talking 1, 2 a week, 3 a week, maybe, then you'll start noticing that there's going to be a time lapse somewhere during the week. Something's going to be missing there, and I've noticed that most of the people that have a constant contact, that they have some sort of missing time. Every single one of them, and and like you too, Don. Same thing. You have that loss of time, and it because of the multiple times that you've had these encounters. It's not just one. And before all this, before 2019, I was the kind of person that I've always looked up in the sky, but I never looked up in the sky as much as I do now. Now I constantly look up in the sky because of the everything that I've researched with people, and people have cried to me, and you see it on a couple of the films. You see their emotion of what they're telling you, because what they're telling you is real, and I want you to hear it in their voice, and how they're shaking when they're talking, and how it's just strange to them, because people need to see that, not somebody that's reading a script, or just talking about it or whatever, and I get that, but I wanted to show people that a lot of people gain the fear from it and the PTSD. And that's what the second film does. It does that to people. So, and it shows that um, the realness of the actual encounter and how it affected that person.
I Yeah, and again, I can't say that you've done a great job at conveying what you were trying to, because that is absolutely what the second film does. You know, we'll get into that, but it really is just a very well put together piece, and some of the testimony in it, like, absolute chills. That's all
Yeah.
I can say. Um,
Yeah.
so can you tell us? in the first film, Terry has an entire crew. Who was that?
Well, it was Jonathan and his son. So they were both out there with him. They would before I went up there. These guys had been working with him. With Jonathan's son. When he was about at the time I went up there, he was about 17 or 16 years old. Right, he's in high school. By now, he's already out of high school. But when we shot it, man, I'm telling you, what you see in that film when they're going on the edge of that cliff and he's stacking those rocks, the boy does that too. They're like mountain goats on the edge, and that was a straight down, brother. That's why I
Wow.
filmed, and I had a zoom lens, so I was like, "No, I'm gonna stand back here, and I'm just gonna zoom in at you, because I don't want to be that close, and I'm not. And look, man, I'm not a weenie, but I'm afraid of heights. Okay, I'm gonna tell you that right now. I'm scared of heights. So imagine I had to suck it up, Buttercup, to do this film because nobody else was going to do it, man. My son, I took my other son with me, Donald Jr. And when we got to the top of Paulina Peak, he was like, didn't want to get out of the vehicle. That's how scary it looks. Because we're not used to that. We're South Texas. We're freaking sea level, man. And so well, yeah. And then when we were up there, he was like, yeah, he goes, I don't know. I said, just hang loose, take some breaths. And I had to walk to the edges and kind of freak myself out a little bit, but I had to suck it up because I knew this had to be done. I knew this film had to be done. And the only one that was going to do it was me because I know what I wanted to shoot and I know what people want to see because I know what I want to see. Right. So especially when you're watching something, you want to be there and I wanted to show everything that way, the angles and different ways of filming, and so all the cinematography, that's all me, man. I put everything together because I wanted to make sure that people get the experience as well inside of that film.
Yeah. Before I roll the second trailer, you guys went up Wendigo Trail and saw a warning. What was that about? And like that kind of was.
Well, it's an old native trail. And like when Terry starts explaining it in the film, he's talking about back in the Western days when people used to go through there in horses and stuff, that the Wendigo were people that would eat other people. So they were a certain, I'm going to say like a native tribe or some sort. And they would give a warning sign. And that was the warning sign. Don't come down here because we're down here and we're going to eat you, if you come down here. So, and if they were, they were, and if they didn't, they didn't, but it was a great warning sign. You know what I'm trying to say? That if they didn't want people going down into that trail, and it's a beautiful area, man. I mean, I've never seen so much beauty in my life when I went up there. I still got those images in my head and experiences because and it was raining the whole time. The whole time we were there, it was raining. And, we just shot everything in the rain and it was just an amazing experience.
Before we get on to the trailer, just for everybody listening and everybody watching, can you explain what the CEs are? Just because we're going to be talking in that context. So I just want everybody to be able to follow along, like what the CEs mean and what they are.
The CE1, it's like something that you see from at least 500 feet or so, right? It's going to be a visual encounter. And it's just something most people do see from a day-to-day thing, right? So, and that's basically what a CE1, it's all the same. You're seeing it from 500 feet away or further, but it's an object that's not indescribable, right? So CE2 is something that actually a craft that comes closer to you but actually affects your technology, anything like your radios, like the movies, like the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, right? So you have that to where it messes with your electronics, cell phones, things like that, where it kind of has like a little bit more static, right? A CE3, I believe it's the third kind where you actually make some sort of, when you're up close to it, real super close to these extraterrestrials, and you're making this contact with them, but at a distance to maybe a wave or something, right? Nothing like you go and shake its hand or thing, but just from a distance still. And that it's that's they explain it a lot in the Close Encounters of the Third Kind because of that. They had the actual closeness of the encounter, right? Um, and it's kind of hard to put into words, but when we go to 4, to where you actually go on board craft, right? CE4, when you go on board craft, you have actual interaction with an extraterrestrial, right? And you don't leave anywhere, but you just have a sort of like they bring in the table, things like that. They are actually interacting with you in a sense to where they're talking to you. CE5 is where they bring the you get in, and this is where it comes to kind of play to me a little bit different. CE5 is when you're calling them up close, but you have more of a consciousness that connects with the craft. You connect with the extraterrestrial. Your psyche opens up. Everything opens up about you, right? In other words, your frequencies, everything that like you said, you have like a download of consciousness, and things look bigger and brighter to you. You know what I mean? You're more connected to that extraterrestrial. So that is more of a CE5, to where it's the awakening, the actual awakening that they give to you. Some of them do that, right? To where you're able to do that. And from then on, things just start coming, like the frequencies of the earth. You can feel everything, everything just kind of, you go like your aura explodes right into this huge thing, right? That's a CE5. CE6, which I didn't talk about last night. So some guy kind of scolded me about it, but it's when the effects of being as close to a UFO craft from a human to an animal dies from the exposure to being as closest to these extraterrestrial vehicles of any kind, right? So that's the 6, most of the older stories from the 1950s, the 1960s, even the 1970s, when they get too close to these crafts, they have this high radioactive exposure, right? Burns their skin, everything like that, and then lo and behold, a week later, Falcon Lake, that one, and where you guys are at, right? So he has that, and he gets sick and gets cancer right away, and then he passes. Right. So it a lot of things happen in that sense. And CE6, people don't talk about it because of that. Right. They don't want to hear that. They'll talk about all the other stuff, but they're not going to talk about that. It's like the Bible, right? Nobody wants to read Revelations. Scares the hell out of you, right? So they coincide together, CE6 and that. Let's just say it that way, right? So yeah, that's basically my breakdown of what those mean.
That was probably the most clear description I think I've ever heard of it. So thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and run the trailer for part 2, and then we'll kind of chit chat on that, and we'll probably bounce back and forth between the two for now.
Right on.
But this, again, here we go.
Holy crap.
I believe it was 5 separate craft. That's some straight UFO shit right there.
That's when I started seeing all of the lights and the contact that I've been witnessing.
Yeah.
So that was the trailer for part 2. And again, I'm going to say you guys have to watch this stuff yourself, because there is such phenomenal footage in there. I can't even, it just blew my mind. And that's actually where Eric James was explaining about his missing time as well, I believe, too. I think that's in the second.
Let's see.
Yeah, I think it's in the second one. We do have another audience question.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
That's right.
Ask him if he's heard anything about all the UFO sightings, and is there a vortex the UFOs are using to travel at Skinwalker Ranch?
Well, I don't. I watched a lot of the series of the Skinwalker, and when I watched it, I mean, it's a great show. Don't get me wrong, it's a great show. And what they pretty much are breaking down that there's some sort of a vortex or some kind of opening there, right, in that general area uh, of these craft coming in and out of the earth from there, right? So, and skinwalkers, hey, it's to me, it could be any of those extraterrestrials out there, whatever. But I believe so. I believe that that is a hot spot. You know, there's a lot of hot spots everywhere. There's a bunch in Mexico and Popocatépetl, the volcano over there. Constantly, every 2-3 days, you see a UFO come out of that volcano, right? And these places are hot spots for these UFO craft, right? Why they choose these areas, I have no freaking idea. But it is they chose these areas for a reason, and they stay there. And to me, it's like like the images in Peru and all these places of the geoglyphs on the ground where they're huge, where you can see them from space or from the atmosphere or whatever. I believe those were just like, hey, turn here and make a right there and come right here. That's our sign right here. Come here. Right. So basically, I think Skinwalker Ranch has a marker, somewhere there to where maybe it's an invisible beam of light that we can't see with our spectrum. Right. But they can. And it's always shining up, and there it is. And it goes straight into there. It's a possibility that that's what's happening there.
Like an intergalactic overpass almost.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Well, it's funny because that allows me to bring up my own that I was going to share with you. Since I moved back to Alberta, I was actually born here. When I came back, I worked in a place called Lake Louise. And the first time I went up there, I saw something in the mountains and my eyes were fixated to it. And I could not let it go because every time I had to go back and forth to see the wife, and I was like, there's something up there. Well, recently we were actually fortunate enough to be able to take a weekend away, and I rented us a cabin in the mountains. Nice. Well, it turns out that cabin in the mountains was directly near the mountain that I was always fixated on. Just a coincidence that we're literally across the road from it.
Wow.
Like, I've been drawn to this since I got here. So I'm going to go ahead and fire that on, and I want to get your take on what you think this could possibly be.
Go for it.
That's the cabin. That's the mountain.
Oh. Was that an opening there, or was that little craft below it? That little white dot.
It actually looks like a door. It's a carved out area, and then there's a actual door that looks like it's been plugged.
Yeah.
Like, and I've been fixated on that since we came back here.
Right. Well,
and that's something that. Go ahead.
You've seen the Isetti Ranch, right? The Mount Shasta, the opening that it opens and closes there. Well, maybe it's one of the galactic freeways there that they're going through. For some reason, they're going through the Earth. These craft, they don't burn. They don't. They can go deep into the water, the oceans. They can go into lava. They can go in anything, and nothing happens to this craft, right? So, but they use the Earth to go through for some reason. Are they using the core maybe to recharge? I don't know. Is there something in there, or is there an inner Earth? And I'm not gonna say inner Earth, but maybe a
Passage.
subterranean city down there, right? What happened
Yeah.
in Los Alamos, right? When they dug down in there. Well, we all
Yeah.
saw the outcome of that.
Yeah. I actually missed a question here from the audience. Just one sec. What does he think about direct contact with plasma beings? They interact with my physical body too and heal stuff.
It depends on which kind, because I've seen some that actually help, and those plasma beings might be they might be there for you. They're there. I guess they came, they could be maybe angelic or some sort, and they're there for you, right? So if they help you, and they help you heal you, then that's what those are there for. In other words, when we're all connected, you can call it the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, Buddha, anything you want to call it. We're all connected together, right? And if these angelic or whatever beings they are, if they want to or help you in that sense, they can. But I'm going to tell you this right now. So in the in my final film, I'm working on it now. I do have a woman. Her name is Jody Lynn Brown, and beautiful person, beautiful human being. You couldn't ask for anybody with a bigger heart. Anyway, she lives in Sedona, Arizona, and she was getting these visits from these orbs that were coming up to her, huge plasma orbs, huge, and they were coming out of mines, right? They came so close to her that she could feel the energy, she could see the electricity and everything that was going inside of these balls. She didn't know what they were. She videotaped them and everything with the camera. She sent them to me, right? So you're going to see that in the film, and she's shared them too as well. You go to her Facebook, but I try to explain those as best as I can. But for her, in that encounter, it did more damage than it did good for her. She ended up getting sick. What we talked about before, remember CE6? So she ended up getting sick from it. And she's starting to recover from it because she feels that it's a possibility that being so close to that one kind of plasma or whatever it is, that it did more damage than good. At first you think it's cool to see and everything, and she sent me pictures, brother, of it almost looks like smoke and everything. But once you start clearing the picture up a little, because this is what I like to do, I analyze things a little bit better. I cleared up and I could see a ship on the ground with the legs like a tripod. I could see that in one of the photos, and I sent it to her and I said, look. And then one of the photos she just recently sent me, it was a long elongated light that was in the sky, probably about, I don't know, 200-300 yards from her. And she took a picture of it. She sent it to me. She was, look, Don, they're here. They're still watch me. And she moved to a different place, but still out there. Anyway, they followed her. So when I zoomed into that photo, at the very top left-hand corner, you could see an alien sticking his head out in that light, in that orb. And then when you look to the right of it, I zoomed in real good. You could see another extraterrestrial. There's two of them on there, and they're like looking at her. One's more of a reddish brown color, and the other one's more of a gray color. And she's like, what the heck? Holy crap. I said, exactly. People are not seeing these things. You have to really analyze these photos in order to know what's inside those orbs. So sometimes it could be good. Sometimes it could be bad. You don't know.
And that's something you touched on in your film as well, is how valuable like the filter technology that we have basically on almost all of our phones and technology now are. Can you explain how that is helpful in identifying the crafts and the things that we miss with the naked eye, I guess?
Yeah. So, when you sometimes you can use a lot of contrast on the photos. What I do is if it's far away, I zoom in and zoom in, I crop and crop until I get the craft like right there. And usually you can see like a little glow around it. So that's the electronic magnetic field that's around the craft, right? And then once you start adjusting your contrast, your brightness, sometimes you don't need to bring up the brightness. You have to bring those down and then you bring up your contrast. Once you do that, then you start sharpening it. Don't sharpen it all the way because it's going to look horrible. But if you start sharpening it, you start making out what's inside of there, right? And that's how I do it. And when then we have, let's see, there's V2 Art. It's called V2 Art. If you download that, that will help you a lot. Anything that has some kind of filtration on it. So V2 Art works great on videos. Okay, I use that on all my videos, and man, that works wonders on analyzation on these UFO crafts that are up in the sky. And then you have to. Not everything's going to be a UFO. It's like, oh, UFO, oh, UFO. No, not everything's going to be UFO. Sometimes you got to see the light patterns if it's at night. Most of, believe it or not, brother, believe it or not, everybody out there, most of these crafts that people send me is during the day. So you're not always going to see them at night. And then if you see them at night, they're mimicking our aircraft. They have the red light or the white light in the back, like your standard helicopter, but the blinking patterns are different. They're not going to be the same. So one thing that I've noticed, they cannot mimic the standard blinking pattern of aviation craft. They can't. It's like usually an aircraft is like 1 2 1 1 2 1, right? But when you see something going plip 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 plip, doing all these kind of different, that's when you know that that's a real UFO, and people really need to look at those when you're trying to analyze your own footage, or just at night on those kind of visualizations, right? You have to really kind of look and kind of do your homework a little bit.
Sorry, we just had somebody pop in here.
Oh, Cindy. Yeah, she's my number one.
Yeah, she was just sharing the ship that was above my house wasn't what caught my attention. It was the bright light, and when I watched the video, I saw. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And with that, like, would you suggest, like, okay, everybody and their brother has a cell phone now. Should we be recording the skies as much as possible? Because if you can grab a basic editing program and slow down your own videos. I have one on my phone. Like, I have a better editing program on my phone than I have on my laptop right now. Right?
Right. Yeah, especially cell phones. They've come up with some really good stuff.
Yeah. Oh, hold on. Another audience question here. Does he think the government has alien technology, and why are aliens attracted to nuclear sites and bases?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I think the government does have it. I don't know if you were on X or anything like that, but Elizondo just came out here about, what was it, last week? Or he was pissed because when they had these congressional hearings about UFOs and everything like that, all the senators and the people that were up there on the hearing, on the committee hearing, all those people have now shut down. They completely shut down. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? So, and I knew it from the very beginning, from the first hearing to the second hearing, from David Grush to all those people out there, that I knew that they were going to get nothing out of nothing. I knew they were going to shut them down eventually, and that's exactly what happened. So, yeah, I think the government does know about technologies and off-world technologies and what we're using today to pick up the pace on our cell phones. Of course, they're not going to give us everything. They're going to give us, maybe half or less than half of it. And the nuclear sites, yeah, those for nuclear power sites. There was a video from some gentleman, I just saw it not too long ago, and he was recording an actual tic tac that was going over the nuclear silo, but it was close to a military base. And he says, "Man, look at it! I'm looking at it right now." And he's videotaping. He goes, "I see this thing all the time, and it's a freaking tic tac going over, always right there at that." He says, "It's always right here, and it goes," and he films it for hours. Now we have a drone. Let's just say a drone or standard drone, whatever. Well, they'll fly for 30, 45 minutes, 30 minutes tops. Mine flies for 28, 25 minutes, but for hours. So I believe that they're possibly picking up the radiation that's actually, it's supposed to be suppressed, or some kind of, they're using it to recharge somehow, because you got to remember that stuff. It can burn as hot as the sun, right?
Yeah.
So maybe they're just using their. I'm going to say like a Wi-Fi for them for the craft. Some sort kind of sucking up, like we can charge our phones without plugging it in, just kind of set it on there and it still sucks up the energy. I believe that these crafts can probably do the same thing.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about Congress and all that, and like how everybody's shut down. What did you think? And there's only one way I can word this because it's what I observed of society. When they had the congressional announcement or hearing or whatever that was, that UFOs were real and they had all of these professional people, and society just shrugged and went, eh. Like, that was the thing where they told the truth and nobody gave a shit.
Yeah.
Like, how did you take that? I was freaked out. I was like, holy crap, they admitted it. It's real. And everybody else, like, everybody living in that third density mindset went, meh.
Yeah, because it's the world that we live in. We're so used to plugging into our technology and so focused on it. It takes you off of the path of, in other words, you're I'm not going to say brainwashed. I'm just going to say sometimes you can be subliminally brainwashed in a sense to where, like, oh well, it's just that, whatever, until we actually see it land on the the Capitol or anywhere. Are people still going to believe it when it happens, or not? You can have, like, you Don, or me myself can have a craft land in front of us. We'll be sitting there taking pictures, videos. People ain't going to believe it. They ain't gonna believe it. It's this is why there's open-mindedness and there's closed-mindedness, right? So some people are just closed-minded and it's just straight. This is the way things are. Some people are just like a funnel, like you and I. We take everything in and it stays with us, right? We just don't let it slim and pass through. So, and I'm just kind of saying it that way because that's how I feel about it. People have been so stigmatized already. We were stigmatized for a long time when talking about ufology, things like that. Now people are like, it's just a UFO. I think they overdid it. Some overdid it in a sense to where they're I know they're trying to disclose and trying to make the whole issue of disclosure and trying to say to the world, we have these things, you need to see them. But without the freaking evidence, brother, if they don't take a piece of the craft in their hand in front of them and throw it on the table in front of cameras to see, and nobody ain't gonna believe a damn thing. You know what I'm trying to say? I can sit here and spitball you all day long, which this probably was happening, right? But if I don't show you the evidence, if I don't bring the evidence to you, then my word means nothing, right? There's just how people are. So that's why in these films, I'm bringing the evidence to you. You're seeing this stuff one by one, because it's not bull crap. It's real. All of it's real, man. And if you don't experience it yourself, then I don't know what to tell you. I mean, but and maybe someday you will, maybe someday you won't. Maybe you're not the one chosen for it.
I think that's very true. And you gave a very good description of what I would call conscious people and unconscious people. And I'm not saying people are not aware. Like, do you understand what I mean? Like, some people just aren't conscious of the things that are going on around us.
Right.
And I've referenced this on my show. I had a musician friend. I was like, bro, I don't know why we're here, but I think I figured out how the construct of this reality actually works and how we're here. And he's like, I don't want to know.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, really?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, please don't tell me. And I'm like, okay. Like, there are people that will come right up to the window, but they won't peek in. Right? Because him and I were having a fairly deep discussion. I'm like, hey, guess what? And he's like, no, thank you. I was like, so some of them are even aware that things are going on, but they don't want to know, and they know they don't want to know.
Right.
As well. So, like,
right.
It's a very strange.
To me, you know how I used to explain this. Some people are afraid of it. and they just don't want to say it. There's a lot of people, you know how you used to have trolls out there on your Facebook pages, and a lot of these alien groups. You would have a troll out there just talking crap all day long, right? These are the people that are afraid of what's real, and I would tell them, why you trolling on these people? Why are you doing it this way? You wouldn't be here if you didn't want to know what's going on, right? In other words, like, if you weren't curious about the truth, you wouldn't be inside of this group to troll, right? Because you want to know, but at the same time, they're kind of scared because if this stuff is real, then oh crap. And when I explain a lot of this to people, it makes a lot of sense, in a sense, to where they understand. And that's what these films are about. And this is why I have these podcasts too, like you, Don. You're trying to explain to people, that these things are real. And by showing it, like Cindy Grigsby, you just saw, she's from Portageville, I believe, Missouri, right? Beautiful human being, beautiful person, right? Church going. She loves her family, loves her children, loves everything. But every night she has visits, every freaking night. And she has some amazing footage. And I wanted to put her in a film, but I wasn't able to get to that part of the United States. So she's just a person out there that's in a hot spot. Her area is a hot spot. People just don't see it. She's constantly throwing it out there. She's got a one called Yeppers, and then she's on all my groups, right? But I'm just telling you that for people out there that don't understand, this is what they see, and this is what regular people see, and this is what they experience. Whether you shut it out or you funnel it in, or you kind of throw it to the side, that's up to you. But for us, we treat this like it's real. It is real. It is real. It's not that it's not real. It's not make believe. It's real. This is real stuff that's happening to people, right? On an everyday basis, and it's constantly nonstop to many people, because they understand, once you experience this, once you see it, you can't unsee it anymore. That's what happens.
Yeah,
That's exactly what happens to
absolutely.
people.
On that subject, Cindy, if you want to message me, I'd be more than happy to talk to you and maybe even have you on the show if you want. So just
Get her on
since
there.
we're on that, hold on. We have one more audience question, and then I'll ask you another one, and then we'll start to wrap up here. My friend in Ontario is just loving you, Donald.
Oh, thank you.
Does he think aliens abduct the same person multiple times, and do they follow that bloodline, the bloodline of people?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I mean, me and my sister experience it all the time now. She experiences it. She was in my film, the first movie. She's in the one in Pecos, New Mexico. That's my sister. She had told me that story over and over and over, for years before I even became a filmmaker. When I was just a regular drinking, partying person, barbecuing guy, she would say that story over. And then when I started getting into this and doing my research, I said, you know what? I gotta put you on the film. You have to show this. And then I was having experiences. I used to live up there too, in Pecos, New Mexico. So I saw a lot of stuff, a lot of strange stuff. And she's still connected, you know. Um, and yeah, I think it goes through the family bloodline. It could be from grandfathers to your great grandfathers, your great great grandfather. We've talked about before, RH negative people, how their bloodline is different, of course, but they seem to be more susceptible to more visitations than regular folks. I kind of off and on about that, because there's a lot of RH negative, but at the same time, it's, to me, and like I talked about that radio program on Monday, we talked about it on the air, that I believe that they choose the people who they want to visit, right? They know if you're a good person, they know if you're a bad person, right? So if they continue to have multiple visits, and if it's a good visitation, then if they leave you alone, they don't scratch you, they don't tear you up, they don't make you bleed or whatever, then they're not there to do you any harm. They're just there to kind of help you through life and maybe guide you in a sense, right? If the bad ones are there, then yeah, that's something different, that you have to really approach it in a different perspective, right? And because those are just have a different agenda, right? And If it goes through the bloodline where you have the good ones come to you, then yeah, then it was meant for the bloodline, and it was meant for you. And who knows? Like okay, so the second movie, when we're filming Ryan Keaton in San Antonio, my son was 14 at the time, right? Jacob. And when we're filming him at night, we're looking for the UFOs out there, and all of a sudden, I said, he goes, dude, they're not coming out. They're not coming out. He was nervous, and which was Ryan was telling him they're not coming out. I said, dude, just go over there, walk over there, concentrate for a minute, talk to them, and they'll come. And we left them alone for about 5-10 minutes, and it was already getting dark, and sure shit, man, here it comes. You start seeing the ball of light just start coming and coming. He goes, dude, here it comes, here they come, here they come. And then it comes, and then it stops, right? In the second film, you could see, and it starts brightening up to us. It starts communicating with us, right? And my son, 14 years old at the time, he's sitting there in awe, trying to hold the camera. That I can't. Just put the camera down. Look at it with your eyes. All right, don't worry about that. I'll get it with my other camera, right? So he goes, Dad, what is that? And I was like, just watch it, right? And we're watching, and this is all unfolding in front of us while we're filming. And then after it starts backing up, we start telling it thank you, and it starts backing up, right? So it can go through the bloodline, and ever since then, this boy sees him all the time now. He sees him with me. He's seen him a couple of times with me already. He's never seen him before. Now he is, right? So I think something fired up in him, and of course he went with me. We saw some in Colorado as well. He saw during broad daylight. We saw it. He saw it. He spotted it right away, and we just couldn't film it. It was just spare the moment. But we saw some strange stuff happening while everything was we were filming. And when we filmed the first movie, that my first son Donald, he wasn't a believer at all. And he said, I'll just go help you film. I was like, all right, just come on, let's go. So when we're doing the interviews and everything starts happening, he starts noticing that everybody's kind of talking the same way, or they're all thinking the same way, or some word pattern comes out exactly the same. And he's like, Dad, did you catch that? I was like, yeah. I said, you're talking about when he said that and that other person 1,000 miles said the same thing, but almost the same way? He goes, yeah, but in a different story. He goes, yeah, you're seeing that, right? He goes, yeah. So he started seeing the connections. And then when we started seeing him at night at Terry's house, flying over us, he started noticing it. And then it's like, once we got back to Texas, it took us 12 days to shoot, right? Once we got back to Texas, he was a totally different person in believing in ufology, because he got to witness it, see the connection between everybody, and know that all these people are connected some way, somehow, some form.
That's awesome. My last question, and then I'm going to run the last trailer and we can give a description of that one too.
Okay.
Is, do you think that there is a correlation between alien sightings and contact and paranormal activity?
Yes. Yes. I believe that they walk within the same realm. They can walk within the same realm as paranormal. So in other words, I believe that the extraterrestrials they say they can jump into 8 to 12 dimensions, I believe. So I believe that they're able to walk into that dimension in order to be invisible to us, but still be there in physical form, right? Just like a ghost is. They can be there. You know how ghosts can knock crap over and push and do all kinds of things, right? Well, an extraterrestrial can do the same. So we get confused at exactly, am I looking at an extraterrestrial, or am I looking at a demon, a spiritual being of some sort, or whatever, right? So most of the time, a extraterrestrial will manifest itself as an extraterrestrial, if it is one, right? A demon can do the same, but it'll just be a ghost, and it'll just be screwing with you the whole damn time, right? And just doing some real, and you'll smell nasty stuff, and it'll stink like death, like something died in the walls or whatever. That's what happens on those, right? But and then there's good ghosts out there too. I'm not saying there's bad ones, but most of the time, an extraterrestrial will manifest itself some way, some form, even in a picture or a video or anything that you catch on your phone or photo. you'll actually see the extraterrestrial itself. That's how you know that that's what it is. And I've learned to narrow that down to know the difference between what and then how it affects people and how it interacts with that person or if it attacks that person. You know what I mean? Or puts them in a bad mental state of mind. You know, that's when I started knowing the difference between which one, what is what.
That is another great explanation, and I think you're absolutely correct. Like I think they are related, that they do walk in the same realm or reality, so to
Yeah.
speak. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna fire up your last trailer, and again, another amazing film. So if everybody just wants to sit and watch this, and we'll start talking about that right.
And Major
here.
Hector Quintanilla is now the chief of Project Blue Book. Major Quintanilla, what are the objectives of Project Blue Book?
As I'm standing there, I kind of, it's a very hard feeling to describe. Skinny arms, skinny legs, but I could only see about half of this thing.
It was just an eye-opening experience. There was a ship coming over the house.
It was like a white light sort of thing that we saw. It was coming out of a cloud.
So that's the third trailer, and again, oh my God. Do you want to give everybody a quick breakdown about what the third installment is about?
So the third installment is actual contact and biopsy, and in the third film I bring in the old, which is I give you the old field of like the 1950s, 1940s. So I mix that in with what the people are experiencing, and I kind of take you back and forth to that to the 1954, 1956, and then to what they're experiencing because like the first guy you saw was Jameson Nash, and you know his was like he was just experiencing some weird stuff and he couldn't tell if it was paranormal or extraterrestrial until he actually saw the extraterrestrial itself, right? So and then it kept on later on in life with him, right? And then we have Regina, right? She actually had a piece cut off of her, so she had more of a biopsy of and of that encounter to where it brought hers was more PTSD and more painful than anything, right? So her story is a little darker, and it just it freaked her out so bad, right? We shot that in Arkansas. We drove all the way to Arkansas to go shoot that, and it was her story was amazing. But she's a beautiful human being, man. She's like loves the universe, the earth, and she's like her spiritual side is great. She's like 100% spiritual, man. But she had a bad experience, and she sees craft all the time too. But I believe that when she got attacked that one time, that she didn't understand. She just came across a bad one, man, and they took a piece of her. Whether most women abductions, of course, you know this, they're going to take the eggs. They'll take eggs from women. You'll usually find a little triangular shape above the navel around that area. That's where you'll know that they extracted eggs from a female. And maybe they took her eggs. I don't know. But she said she was in so much pain and it was for such a long time that she couldn't get that out of her mind. So I thought hers was so important to put in the film because she experienced some dark stuff. And then Robert Bro himself too. He was seeing some weird stuff where it looked spiritual too. It looked like demons, and then he started seeing more craft as well afterwards, because it happened with him and his daughter when she was younger, right? So, and then it kept on coming at him. That's the thing. This is where it gets darker. So if you notice from the first movie, we explain Cascadia Guides. Second movie, we're starting to see the impact of people, how it affects you. The third movie, you start getting into a little bit more darker realm, right? Of the actual extraterrestrial encounter. And you see it in their faces. You see it how they're talking. You see it how their nervousness is. And that's what I was telling you earlier. I want people to see that because that is the realism of their stories. It's not just these are not $1 million films. No, and I wish they could have been, produced that way. But you don't need to make $1 million film to have a good outcome up from it, right? So 12 days, yeah, of pre-production. That exactly. But it took me months. It took me 7 months to edit myself. I edited everything. Everything that you see in all these films, I edit every single film, right? Because I wanted the vision. I wanted you guys to see the vision of what I was seeing, right? So who's a better place to do it? I mean, guess what? I had to learn editing. Programs, hours and hours. I didn't have a family for about a year, okay? This is how deep I got pulled into it, man. I was in my office 12 hours a day, almost. Even after work, I was coming in and just doing it till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, punching it in the keys, right? Because I wanted this to come out. I wanted people to see this. And that was the importance of it. Because, hey, man, it's like you say, tomorrow's never promised for any of us. I don't know if God would take me one day or whatever. I said, you know what? I want something people to see that not just because I made it, but because they need to see this. You know what I mean? They need to experience what I'm experiencing when I interview these folks and what they're experiencing really in reality. You have to touch, make that connection with the viewer and the person that they're actually watching, or the encounter that actually is unfolding before them. Because if in other words, I want to make sure that I did my job as far as in the film. If you enjoyed it, and if you not enjoy to, oh wow, it's great. No, to enjoy to where it's like it pulled you in. If I pulled you in these films, then I did my job as far as showing you exactly.
And you have absolutely nailed that, in my opinion. And my wife was saying earlier, like, we just watched it again last night, and just an absolutely mind-blowing series of films. And I, again, can't wait for the next one. You and I could possibly have something in the works once that happens. Do you want to tell everybody what's coming out with you, and when the number 4 is going to be out, and what you got going on podcast wise and all that good stuff?
Yeah. So my last film, the middle part 4, which is, it's going to be called Redemption, which is the last series. Oh, thank you. So it's the last series of the film, right? So that last film is going to be about an hour and 15 to 20 minutes. Okay. So I'm about halfway done on the film. And as far as editing and stuff, every time I watch it, I get little goosebumps. So I know if it did that to me, it's probably going to do that to you too. Right after you watch, it's going to pull you in. So I want to make sure that I get everything that I need to in there. So Redemption, it's what it means, right? I want to show you some stories of other people, 2 more folks, and then you're going to see the stories of everybody at the very end of this that unfolds, right? And what happens to them afterwards, right? And once I get that done, you guys are going to be able to see. You'll be the first one down. I'll send you a screening of it, so you guys will be the first ones that I send it to for sure. And of course, we have I do Alien Strand podcast. I did one last night. I decided to do one, so I just do one on the fly every once in a while when I'm not busy. But I wish I had a more schedule. And then we just started a new podcast called the Awakening Frequency Podcast. So with Danielle and myself. So it's a co-hosted, and we have a special guest. His name's Jason Sands. That he was on the Joe Rogan podcast. He's going to be our first big guest that's going to be coming on that show. So I hope everybody kind of tunes into it, goes and looks at it. I'm juggling 10 jobs, man, right now, but I want to make sure that everything, all the work that I've ever done was a good thing and to help people. And I've noticed that from every job that I've ever done, as far as the disclosure, because we are all citizen ufologists, really, in reality. That's who we are. We all give disclosure every day as regular citizens. And we make a big difference if we all work together, not against each other. If we all work together, in other words, we all need to just stick together. And if we do that, we make a larger impact in the community and in the world, actually. And with my films, the good thing about those is they can actually be worldwide, and they have reached a few places around the world, right? So, and that's what I'm trying to do here, just to make a difference and to show people. I'm not trying to be a millionaire. That's not going to happen. Not in documentaries. That ain't going to happen. You know what I mean? But the to be a storyteller and to get it across to people of the truth, of the disclosure. If I can do that in a film, if that's the best way I can do it, then I'm going to do it that way.
I'm going to grab all your links and put them in the description as well, because I've already subscribed to both of your YouTube channels and love them both.
Right on.
We do have one last question, and it's from my buddy Cheech. And Cheech, you need to just go subscribe to Alien Strand, and you'll see all this yourself. But
yeah, join the club, man.
Does he think Bigfoot is an alien and that has cloaking abilities?
You know what? I have a video of that. I just haven't thrown it out there. It's a video that I found floating out there in the interweb, but it actually shows one cloaking, and it's not AI. It's not none of that crap. It's an actual, this guy's actually filming this thing cloak and uncloak itself. Right. And we always look at Bigfoot as this monstrosity, huge thing, but it's able to do that. How? If it's not, I'm telling you, those things are from off planet. They're not from here. They're something mixed up, made out there somewhere in a different planet. And they were brought here. Right. And because they can appear and they can disappear like that too. And usually people don't ever talk about it, but they always say that when you see a Sasquatch sighting or a Bigfoot, whatever you want to call them, that you'll always see a UFO sighting right close to there within the same time frame. How's that happen? So,
and I totally agree. I think Sasquatch or Bigfoot have some ability to phase shift, and that's the best explanation, is they have better control of their molecular structure than we do, and have the ability to phase in and out. That's my spitball take on it, but they are absolutely amazing.
Yeah. I agree.
So, since we're on the topic of documentaries, I am going to once again run the new Doors of Perception Forbidden Knowledge documentary after the end of this. If you guys want to stick around and watch that is another production by Chris Matthew. Donald, I can't thank you enough for an amazing interview. We went almost 90 minutes, and it seemed like about 5. So Thank you again, my friend.
Oh, thank you.
And for everybody that was in the chat, and Jason H is going to subscribe to your channel. For everybody who's been in the chat and following along, thank you. For everybody that listens to this in the future, thank you. And like I always say, if you can go outside, please do, because it's better than sitting in front of a screen.
The nature of this experience seems to always be just beyond the reach of our science, technology, and consciousness collective.
There's layers upon layers upon layers.
It does add such an element of mystery to this place.
Why are we here?
We're getting closer to the truth now.
There's too many people experiencing profound interactions with conscious entities.
I'm focused on the non-human intelligence contact phenomenon in dreams. Dreams involve interactions with real entities.
People are waking up paralyzed. They're sensing or seeing something very evil in the room.
I have experienced sleep paralysis. Shadow people start to appear.
I was taken from my earliest memories by non-human alien entities. More and more people are wanting to talk about these things.
A ufologist would say, well, that's obviously an extraterrestrial. And a paranormal researcher would say, well, that's a ghost. Well, what if it's all of those things and none of those things? The entities, the intelligence that were just beyond our understanding.
There seems to be something a little extra that can take forms of anything.
I can't believe what I've seen, but it continues on a daily basis. We're definitely not alone. UFOs, UAPs, portals opening up.
I live with all this supernatural stuff. You kind of grow up with that around here. You see a lot of strange things. I don't like to talk about skinwalkers too much.
I had an experience with a skinwalker entity.
People, they would say they would transform into bears, into wolves. There's these bad things that occur. Ghosts, UFOs, and all types of things coming from somewhere.
Our beliefs, our emotions, and our fears all seem to heavily influence the nature of these experiences.
There is so much more that we just don't have time for in this busy, loud, noisy life that we lead.
All of this is planned. Everything is synchronicity.
There's so much more out there. We really are picking up such a small percentage of the electromagnetic spectrum.
The world is an amazing place.
It feels like we're gods in training.